When Julie Allison moved to Oklahoma in 2002, she knew tornadoes, ice storms, and droughts came with the territory, but she didn't expect earthquakes.
The sensation of an earthquake is something you don't forget. It is a sensation of just really helplessness.
Breaking this morning, that large earthquake centered near Edmond.
Last December, a magnitude 4.3 quake rattled her home in the Oklahoma City suburb of Edmond. That was followed by a flurry of smaller tremors.
A lot of cracking that's coming in through here.
Enough, she says, to crack her foundation and shake up her living room.
This entire room was in disarray.
Generally speaking, 3.0 earthquakes can be felt. 4.0 earthquakes can be damaging. Before 2009, there were only a handful of earthquakes in Oklahoma over magnitude 3.0 each year. In 2015, there were more than 900.
It was a little mysterious at the very beginning.
Oklahoma State University geology professor Todd Hallahan says the likely culprit is water that's injected deep into the earth as a result of oil and gas drilling.
If you look at most oil wells, they're a saltwater well that has a little bit of oil and gas in it. And so you have to do something with that byproduct, which is sometimes the main product, which is saltwater.
For decades, oil and gas companies in Oklahoma have been getting rid of that water by injecting it back underground. In recent years, oil production has been on the rise in Oklahoma, partly due to technologies like fracking, a method of bursting rock formations to extract oil and gas. At some oil and gas wells, for every barrel of oil that's produced, 20 barrels of salty wastewater bubble up as well.
The problem is that in recent years, our rates and volumes have increased, both the total amount and the intensity at which we pump it into the subsurface. And we've gotten above levels that are causing seismicity.
Last year, energy companies in Oklahoma injected 1.5 billion barrels of wastewater back into the earth. Hallahan says all that water reduces friction between faults or cracks deep underground, releasing pent-up energy and causing the earth to shake. There's no question the energy industry has always played a huge role here in Oklahoma. In fact, up until the 1980s, there were active oil wells here on the state capitol grounds in Oklahoma City. But constant quakes are posing tough questions for an industry responsible for 1 in 5 jobs in Oklahoma and nearly a third of the state's economy. Last year, Oklahoma's Republican governor, Mary Fallin, said she believes there's a direct correlation between the increase in earthquakes and wastewater disposal wells. And critics of the industry, like Democratic State Representative Corey Williams, say there should be a moratorium on wastewater injections in seismically active areas.
All of the actual science, the peer-reviewed literature that is out there, that is getting published in the scientific press, all draws the same conclusions. Yes, you are inducing seismicity. Yes, you are growing to a bigger and bigger seismic activity. And yes, you need to stop.
But Chad Wormington, president of the Oklahoma Oil and Gas Association, hesitates to say the injections are actually causing quakes.
Yeah, I think that it's one of those issues where over the last few years, we've been really struggling to figure out what the connection is. And there certainly appears to be a correlation in terms of the amount of wastewater that's been injected over the last 4 years and the increase in seismicity.
Correlation, though, is not cause.
I think that's correct. I think that there are a lot of things that we don't know. There's a lot of things that we can't explain. So what that leads us to believe is there's just a lot more science that we need to get to. We need to get to the bottom of what's going on.
The industry still disputes the link. Why do you suppose that is?
Well, I think they have billions of dollars of reasons why. I mean, I think the incentive for them is to continue to drag their feet as long as they possibly can, so they can inject at the same rates and extrapolate every last possible resource they can out of it before we actually implement real change and real regulation.
And we have all the wells metered, so...
After an earthquake strikes, the state's oil and gas regulator, the Oklahoma Corporation Commission, often directs companies to slow or stop wastewater injections at particular wells.
We're trying to manage the risk. So
Tim Baker heads the commission's oil and gas division. Can you say that by just controlling that one lever, you can help prevent earthquakes?
All we can do is help manage the risk. Seismologists tell us what the highest risk scenarios are, and that's what we're focusing our efforts on, managing the risk, lowering that risk, and hopefully that will have some result in the number of earthquakes declining over time. We can see if volumes are coming up, volumes are going down, and then we can correlate that with Seismic activity is the seismic.
Although oil and gas companies aren't required to follow his office's directives, they usually do. But last December, one of the state's biggest oil companies, Sandridge Energy, refused an order to cut back wastewater injections, saying more scientific analysis needed to be done. The company relented earlier this month, agreeing to close 7 of its wells, but the incident raised concerns about the effectiveness of the commission's orders.
I mean, there is an opening here for companies to say, actually, we're not going to listen to your voluntary directives. Has the industry been cooperative, and do you think they'll be cooperative going forward?
Everyone I've spoken to, and we've had countless meetings at this point, all want to cooperate. And if someone refuses to cooperate, we still have jurisdiction to file an application and either amend or vacate their permit.
So far, Baker hasn't had to take that step, which would involve a drawn-out judicial process. As the number of earthquakes in Oklahoma has increased, the state legislature has cut the budget of the commission, the only state agency with power to regulate drillers, by 14%, from $12.4 million in 2009 to $10.7 million last year.
We don't have the resources to stay up with every earthquake that happens in the state. We focus on the 4.0s. At that point, we know that's a trigger in which we can take response. But do we make a scientific assessment of every earthquake that happens in the state? No, we don't, because we don't have the resources to do that.
They call Cushing, Oklahoma, the pipeline crossroads of the world. And last October, there was a magnitude 4.5 earthquake near here. And it got folks worried that not only do these earthquakes pose a risk to life and property, but also to the country's energy infrastructure.
Oil and gas companies rely on giant storage tanks in Cushing to hold up to 85 million barrels of oil. If an earthquake were to compromise those tanks, it could disrupt oil markets worldwide. October's quake was the 5th near Cushing, greater than magnitude 4.0 in just a year. Last fall, the Corporation Commission ordered companies to slow or stop wastewater injections nearby, in part to protect those oil tanks.
Do you feel that those facilities are able to withstand the increased seismic activity we're seeing in Oklahoma?
I do.
Michael Teague is Oklahoma's Secretary of Energy and Environment. He says the industry and federal inspectors regularly check those tanks.
I'm also comfortable that if there was an area that's got a focus on it for the Corporation Commission, that be very quick to react if there are any earthquakes, it's Cushing.
Teague says he's confident the Corporation Commission's voluntary directives will keep earthquakes in check in Cushing and elsewhere in the state.
But it does, at the end of the day, seem very reactive. They watch a seismic event happen and then they follow up with a directive. Isn't there some way to prevent these earthquakes before they happen?
It's very reactive, and I don't know how to make it proactive because we don't know what that trigger is.
The Office of the Corporation Commission, Tim Baker tells me they don't have all the resources they need. They've seen their budget get cut back. Your head seismologist at the Oklahoma Geological Survey left last year.
He did.
Are you equipping your chief regulator with enough resources to do their jobs?
I don't think we have yet, and I think we've been slow to get there. I think very, very soon you're going to see additional resources go to both agencies.
As global oil prices have fallen from $100 a barrel to around $30, so have tax revenues in Oklahoma. The state faces a $900 million budget shortfall this year. State Representative Williams says legislators must provide more funding for regulators and researchers to do their jobs.
You've got to open up your checkbook. You've got to give them the staffing and the resources to be able to actually do the thing that they need to be able to do. Heck, we don't even have a seismologist on staff anymore in the state of Oklahoma, and nobody seems overwhelmingly concerned about that.
Oklahoma Oil and Gas Association President Chad Warmington says he and his members are concerned.
I live in Edmond. I feel these quakes. I live here. It's not like I'm not a part of this, and I would like it to speed up quicker. But I do believe in the process the Commission has, and we're getting on top of it. Not as quickly as we'd like. It's probably not a very good political answer, but it's the right science-based answer.
You know, a skeptic could be sitting here listening to you say this and, fair or unfair, think this is just the industry covering its butts.
Sure.
They don't want to say this because they don't want to open themselves up to being blamed for earthquakes. What do you say to those people?
As long as the Commission, the state, is working to use science-based determinations of what's causing these quakes, we're going to be fine with the outcome. We're going to participate in the investigation, and we're going to do everything we can to help bring an end to, or definitely slow down the amount and the magnitude of the earthquakes in the state.
But geologist Todd Hallahan says before that can happen, the state has to invest more in the commission and scientific research.
They barely have enough money to analyze the quakes that have happened or to analyze which injection wells are doing what. That's the funding level. And so the sense that there's analysis going on, that's not happening.
On Thursday, Governor Fallin announced she would direct $1.4 million in state emergency funds to the Corporation Commission and the State Geological Survey.